Yo, this is Andrew, and today, as I'm planning a new set of papers, I would like to take you guys along to see how I choose the topics for various questions in real time. So, for this paper, I do have a couple ideas for good questions flying around, one of which is solving simultaneous equations involving logarithms. So they have to manipulate logarithms to get to the simultaneous equations. And another idea that I have in mind has to do with the distance between the roots on the complex plane. So what I have in mind is something that looks like a star. And then I'm asking them to find the total distance of the diagonals inside that star. This can also be an investigation towards the end. You can also generalize as time goes on. So this is yet another way to extend the question. And these two, depending on how you want to expand it, can be a full section B question. So let's have a look at these papers. It will be a fun idea if we take the simultaneous equations one and we make it a section B question. That would definitely require a bit of scaffolding, but that would also make it a lot more fun. We can choose to keep it simple. So instead of using x, y, and z, we can use log base 2 of x, log base 3 of y, log base 4 of z, and so on. So that for one value of log base 2 of x, that's one value of x. That would make it somewhat simpler. That doesn't have to be the case though. So I'm actually gonna go for it as question 12, aka the very last question on the exam. So simultaneous equations with logs. I usually plan the three section B questions first because they are longer and they take a lot more effort to write. The shorter ones, especially questions 1 to 5, I would say the easier questions, it would take me about 2 minutes to write per question because it's really not that hard. It's only questions 9, maybe the trickier question 5 or 6 for the SL content, as well as the section B questions that are more problematic. So that's one section B question done. Because there's no calculus in question 12, we can do some sort of curve sketching in question 11. Or we can also do complex numbers, this question that we were talking about. At the end, we can also probably do an induction, but I'm not entirely sure how that will work out. So let's do, okay, so let's do our typical complex number question in question 11. This means that question 10 should be on calculus because there's not a lot of calculus in questions 11 and 12, and it is still a big part of the course. So the easiest one that I have in mind that would combine calculus as well as functions and potentially transformations would be good old curve sketching of maybe ax plus b divided by cx squared plus dx plus e. Or we can also do quadratic over linear. This also allows us to test transformations as well. So that's questions 10, 11, and 12. For paper 2, my instinct is going for Maclaurin series, or at bare minimum, it's gonna be a geometric series because you can make a very good long question with it. So let's say we go with sequences and series for question 10. A gentle way to start section B. And what I'm thinking is more of giving students two models. So let's say you have this dot, that's part A, that leads to part B. Then you have part C, that leads to part D. And then you combine them and you get to part E. So this is the schema that I have in mind for this kind of question. Probably no calculus, let's keep it real simple. 11 can be, I'm thinking of using a vectors question. Now for vectors, it also depends on how hard you want it to be. That can be said with pretty much all these questions really. If I want a very discriminating vector question, I would look at Singapore H2, and if that's the case, I would actually put it here. So there's gonna be H2, and I'm thinking of ACJC in particular because it's one of the JCs, the junior colleges, that gives very, very hard exams. So we have a bit of sequence series, we have a bit of vectors, we're still missing something. Calculus, right. Okay. So we have a couple of choices. We can do differential equations. We can do a bit of integration. We can do a bit of differentiation. I'm thinking of doing integration slash differential equations. So I'm thinking of a pretty typical question, right? Let's say you have a curve like this, and then they start off with a differential equation that then gives you the equation in terms of x and y, and then you can find the volume of revolution, or you can even go on related rates, for example. So really, the word is your oyster. You can be very creative with this kind of question as long as you have a function. So I'm very tempted to go with differential equations. So differential equations, integration, may or may not have related rates. You want to be ambitious, but you also don't want to overload your questions. 18 marks is really not a lot. So if you split four-way, that means that each question part is worth 4 marks. And that's usually shorter than a typical section B question part per topic, I mean. So that's the three section B questions sorted out. Now let's go back and finish the gaps. Question 10 is going to be the crossover question with the SL paper. There will be no crossover on paper 1. That means that we should have more crossover questions in section A. So let's say question 1, we can give them something very mild, something very calm to start off the paper. I usually start with a simple integration question or a simple stats question or a simple differentiation question or a simple trick equation to kick off the paper. But I've been doing that so often, I'm actually going to give them a functions question and composition to kick us off. Question 2 is going to be somewhat harder than question 1, but not too much harder. So probably some sort of equation. And I'm thinking of doing exponential, because why not? Question 5 is going to be trigonometries and equations. This is going to be the last question in section A for SL. So this one has to be difficult. In fact, it may be too difficult that I would actually put it as question 7 on the SL paper. Oh, sorry, on the HL paper. Okay, so that's 3 questions done. We still need a bit more trick. So we can also do just some compound angle formula stuff in question 3 or 4. That's a bit brutal though. Okay, so I may keep it as question 4 on paper 2 then. Compound angle formula. Okay. So far we barely have any integration. So we definitely need more integration on the paper. Question 1 has been pretty light on calculus so far. So I'm thinking of chucking in probably 2 calculus questions here, maybe 3 on paper 1. After all, AEHL is a calculus course. It is a massive part of the exam. So I'm thinking of doing a bit of implicit differentiation here. And I put it here because I plan to add some items to it. So it can either be a proof or it can also be find a second derivative to determine the nature of a turning point or things of that nature. I should also add a part on integration by parts. I have seen the IB done a question with 2 parts that are totally unrelated in section A. Personally, I'm not a fan of that. So if there is a way to make it work a bit nicer, we'll do that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do integration by parts over here. Because question 3, I'm not gonna give them something very complicated. It's gonna be something like integral of x ln of x dx or something similar to that. This is not fancy, okay? I can also give them a definite integral. I'm not entirely sure if I want to do that because that would add more marks. That would also test their log skills, but we will be testing their logarithms over here already. So I do not think that we should penalize students twice for the same topic. Questions 4, 5, and 6. Students usually screw up proof by contradiction. pretty much all the time. And it usually shows up every year. So at least it's gonna go on one of the papers for that series. So for those who are new to the IB system, right now for the May session, there are three variants, and each variant has three papers. So I'm banking on the, so I bet that proof by contradiction will show up on at least one of the nine papers, if not a bit more often. So it's definitely a topic that students should not ignore. I can also put it on paper two because why not, really? And if paper two is a bit light on proofs, it's not a bad idea. So, yeah, I think I'm actually gonna put it on paper two. So the four questions in session A, I usually prefer to leave some wildcards, aka questions I'm not entirely sure what topic to test. I will usually leave it blank on paper two. I'm more of a purist, so I much prefer paper one. No calculator, no BS, just get dirty with the math. Actually, I may change this question part and can just call for the differential equations. Let's say if we have a reaction going on, for example, then that would be fun. Maybe some sort of CSTR or PFR, that would also be fun. Or induction, no, sorry, not induction, conduction or convection, that would also be fun. You know, a bit of chem taste flavor, because I did chemical engineering in uni, so that's only fair. Four questions on paper one. It really depends on what kind of transformation I test over here. I really do want to test a bit more transformations. So this guy can be maybe question three, I don't know. Transformation, but also kind of wild card. Because it's dependent on question 10. Question 4. What else have we not tested? Okay, binomial expansion. We have not covered that. So let's make question 5 binomial expansion. It's also gonna be a crossover, I presume. So binomial expansion. Good. Counting. Counting, 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 counting. Counting is gonna go at question 9. I want to give them a very hard counting question. So by counting principles, we mean permutation and combinations. Or you may have heard of it referred to as combinatorics. 3 more to go. Oh, right, we have not covered any stats so far. I just realized that. Okay, so now all 3 has to be stats. Easy peasy. So, the hardest piece of stats that we can give on paper 1 will have to be calculus based. So I'm thinking of doing some continuous random variable. Or we can also do a question combining discrete RV with other things. But let's put continuous RV over here. If we really want to combine this with discrete RV, aka instead of giving them a straight trig equation to solve, we can frame it in a way that we can give them a random variable x, we can give them the various outcomes, we can give them the probability of each outcome, and they will derive the equation that they need to solve. That is another way to go about this. Sure. So, two more. The IB usually loves combining standard form or index or scientific notation for those living in not UK. The UK the IB loves giving a question on scientific notation. It would not be a question on its own, but it will be tested in a very not so subtle way on the exam. So that can be part of any questions really. Okay. Question 4, we can do a bit of cumulative frequency. That'll be very straightforward, but that can work. And there are several ways we can change the representation, right? Instead of giving them the frequency table to sketch the cumulative frequency, we can give them a mix of both. We can give them the curve, they have to fill in the table, yada. There are a lot of ways to be clever with this, so that's totally fine. We can also choose to give the median. But yes, there are a lot of ways that you can make this seemingly simple topic challenging. Just tad challenging, not too much. Those that understand the concept will get the marks. It also seems like there's a lot of SL content on paper in section A so far, but that is to make up for section B. So I think that's fine. That's not a problem. We can chuck in another vectors question. That would be a little bit predictable though, but you can do that. This guy's gonna be more, you know, dot product, but a more abstract type. So let's say you're given magnitude of A, magnitude of B, the angle between the two, or A dot B, and so on and so forth. That's one way to go about it. Okay, so that's paper one sorted. There's really not enough stats on paper one. I may actually have to switch this out with another one on, oh yeah, probability notation. The set notations thingy. And independence. Yep, that can easily be question 6. Cool. So that's paper 1. Paper 2, we still have 5 questions to fill in. So far, if we look at the paper, seems like we have a fair amount of trigonometry and vectors. So we should probably add a single question and that should be good. So let's say I will add trig relationship to the mix. And by trig relationships, I mean the sine rule, the cosine rule, and the area of a triangle. So nothing fancy, the easiest of the easiest. If you want to test bearing, that will be challenging. If you want to test 3D trigonometry, that will be challenging. But otherwise, this should be 3 marks. And considering that it is question 1, it will be 3 marks. It has to. Okay, so that's done. We do not have any stats on this paper either. So we can just do a quick question on descriptive stats. Let's say you're given the mean, you're given the standard deviation, and then they're asked to find the missing variables. Or it's gonna be some questions that are similar to the Hong Kong DSE because they are known to have very, very hard stats questions. So that's one stats. There must be a question on normal and binomial, and I am going to combine the two in this question. This is very common, right, on the exam, except that it's usually a section B question because there is a lot of meat in the question. But you can make it shorter and call it section A. You can definitely do that. It's going to be an 8 marker though. It's not going to be a 5 marker. So that's question 2. If you really want, you can also test it twice. But if you test it twice on a paper, I guess that's fair. Because it's 2 section A questions instead of 1 section B question. So the trade-off will work out, I assume. So now we are left with 2 wildcards, and I would actually leave them as wildcards. One of them will be stats, though. And I'm not entirely sure what other piece of stats that I can add. Actually, I don't have to. This is fine as is. The stats portion of the course should worth about, say, 15% of the marks. I think that's reasonable. And with the 5 questions we have right now, it is around 30 to 32 marks, assuming 6 marks per question. And a binomial one is going to be 8 because it is quite a biggie. So that's it, people. That's how you have just seen how I choose the topics in real life, in real time. My thought process going through the entire topics of the course. There's some topics that I did not include, say L'Hopital's rule. That's also because it doesn't show up very often. It is part of the course, it does show up. And sometimes you can make those tiny adjustments within the question itself. Say question 10, you can easily chuck in a part on L'Hopital's if you so wish. So, yeah. This video is mostly on me narrating my train of thoughts, so it will be a bit incoherent. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. And if you enjoy these kind of videos, please get in touch. I'm more than happy to talk to you guys. Have fun with writing exams. Have fun with writing exams. Andrews out.